All right. So today we are on meeting with Ron Nussbaum, founder of Builder.com's software and host of Construction Champions podcast. I was on Ron's podcast. Now it's my turn to ask some questions. How are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am doing fantastic. I'm super excited to have this conversation today. And yeah, so I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, just over a decade in residential construction. I've done everything from digging the hose and running the jackhammer to running the company and anything you can think of in between. And scaled to a couple hundred employees, 8 figures. And now I have a software company that helps the construction industry communicate effectively. So, and I am the host of Construction Champions podcast, which has become my favorite thing I do because I get to talk to people like you every day.
Yes, providing more value. So tell us a little bit more about your software that helps provide better communication between the parties involved in construction.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into customer communication. So the first article you can trace this back to is 1991, where it said the three things that would cause a residential construction project to go awry. Number two was communication. We're talking over 30 years ago, and we just let it be acceptable in construction. Like it's a construction project. It's okay to be bad communicators. I feel differently about it. I feel like it was one of the biggest headaches I had. And I know it's a headache for everybody. So what I did was one night I was laying in bed and it hit me. I was like, if I just had software that got the client, the homeowner on the same page as myself and everybody else, it would make my life a lot easier. So I went down the road to build that. And we're nothing complex. I like to say we're the simplest solution out there to what everybody looks at as a complex problem. We just make sure that your homeowner has the direct access to the project and the people at your company to make effective communication happen. Like we're just a tool in the tool belt is one of the best ways for me to explain what we do. We get rid of all the he said, she said. Get all the communication, pictures, and documents in one place, and then we organize them per project for you and your clients.
Yeah, I feel like the trust is one of the most important things, especially when it comes to your clients. And this trust is what you have to gain by clearly communicating that they expect that you will be there if they have questions, that you will deliver things on time, that you will stay in contact with them. So what strategies or techniques have you found to be most effective when it comes to, developing that trust with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk on one of my favorite subjects here. Not just because I do communication, just because I think communication is just overlooked. So what you're talking about, it's expectations. One of our biggest failures is we don't set appropriate expectations with our clients. So like you say you go out and you sell a roof. That customer is all excited. They're getting a brand new roof. You're excited. You're going to be putting it on for them. And then you guys part ways and have zero conversations about how you're going to communicate, who's going to communicate, what way you're going to communicate. And then we just all go on our ways. And then next thing, there's a communication breakdown. And it's a 5 alarm fire. And we're like, well, it's just the construction industry. What I would like to do is like, let's back that up a few steps. Don't we think like no matter how you're going to communicate with your homeowners, you should probably set some expectations like, hey, Mary and Bob, we only do emails. If it doesn't happen in emails, it doesn't happen. So now like that customer understands they're supposed to email you if they have a question. Because what ends up happening when we just leave and don't say anything, what do? First, they're going to text you. Well, you're probably busy because we didn't set any expectations. Like, hey, give me a few hours to get back to you. 911 me if you need to, but like, give me some time because I have other customers. So we set some more expectations there with them when it comes to communication. But what they do is they're going to text you. Then you're not going to answer that text. They're going to email you. You're not going to answer that email. Then they're going to start calling you and leaving voicemails. And I like to say construction is one of the things that escalates like really, really quickly because we're dealing with a client and a project on somebody's house. They feel like it needs to happen. They need closure on it right away, whether they do or not. The reason they think they need closure is because we didn't set the appropriate expectations. So I think everybody should use builder comms, but if you don't, like, set these expectations. Like, if you only want to talk to your customers via text message, make sure you're telling them that and you're having that conversation up front. Like, hey, I only do text messages. You guys have my number. That's text back and forth. It creates a record for both of us. And give me a couple hours to get back to you because I do have other job sites. I am with other clients. Who knows? I might be on another roof doing something. So I don't want to be up there on my phone. So give me some time to be able to get back to you. I will. This is how we're going to communicate. Now, Mary and Bob, I hope I said Mary and Bob to start with, but Mary and Bob now have clear expectations on how we're going to communicate through this project. Like, it's that simple, but it's that hard as well.
At the same time, it's bringing me to my next question. You know, a lot of business owners are super busy, right? And for them to tell somebody, hey, you can text me anytime you have a question. Like, yes, we want to be supportive. We want them to feel that they're an important client, but at the same time, we have a gazillion things going on at the same time, right? And I know a lot of my clients for sure just running around so busy. And it might be one of the reasons why they're missing those, important communication parts. So I wonder, what are the examples of the specific systems that you know of that could help streamline that process of communication with the clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you understand like where you're going to communicate, you want to create some systems around that. Like, this is how we do it here. Like, we only answer the phone between these hours unless it's an emergency and we have an emergency number. It's not just expectations, but it's boundaries that you're talking about having with your customers. Every other business has this kind of stuff. But for some reason in construction, we feel like we can have our light on 24/7, which in some cases you do. We have companies run 24/7. They have emergency lines, but that doesn't mean you as the owner are the emergency line. So having a triage, having how and who communicates about what matters. Because this is how one of the problems I always ran into was I would get a phone call. A customer would go on the website, they would find Ron Nussbaum and be like, this is the guy that has all the answers because he's at the top of the totem pole. Well, I have zero answers when it comes to any of the projects because I got 30 crews running. It's not my job, but that's not how the customers see that. So you need to make sure there's a way that customer can talk with the right people at your company. So within our software, we make sure that customer is communicating with the right person. We have these channels of communication. But it's as easy as saying, here are the people in my company that does this. Reach out to them. If you have a scheduling question, talk to the person that's in charge of the schedule. Like, create these systems. So what what happens a lot of times is like either that guy, Sarah's rep, gets the phone call and industry standard is, hey, sorry, I'm not the guy. Let me find them and I'll get back to you. Well, we should already know. Like, you need to call this person. If you're not going to implement any other technology into your business, give everybody a registry of who does what. So like when they get that customer that calls and says, man, I have a question about the schedule, who do I reach out to? I know you're probably not the person. You can be like, hey, that's John over here. Here's his number. Here's his email. Same business hours as everything else. He's typically at the office about 5. So if you're reaching out after that, you're not going to hear anything back the next day. Like, this is just like clear expectations, not just with your customer, but with your staff. Like, this is how we do it here. We systematize everything else in our business, but we just kind of let communication run amok. Like, there doesn't have to necessarily be this system, but there should be.
Yeah, there should be a system, a process for every single part of your business, especially if you want to buy back your time and not do, wear 20 different hats, and do it all at the same time. But your reputation of your company is very important. The work that you do for your customers is very important, and that communication is the key piece. I agree with that. Are there any actionable tips or takeaways you can offer to construction business owners watching, so they could improve their communication, and maybe some challenges that they have been, like, some of your customers have been experiencing implementing those systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 3 things that I say every company needs to do is, 1, you need to have a single form of communication. Whether you use builder comms or you use your email, whatever you decide on, this is how we're going to communicate here. Like, just pick something and say, this is what we're going to use. Then put a system around it. Lay those boundaries out there so everybody understands, this is what we're using. This is how we're going to use it. These are the expectations, not just with the customers, but with the employees. And then you have to train on it. I think in construction, too often we do like one training and we just think, oh, whoa, I fixed everything. No, you have to continue to train on it and continue to implement it so people understand, like, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and then we train on it and we practice. So people aren't on their phones at 9 o'clock at night having conversations with homeowners, because if that stuff's happening, that's the expectations that you have set. So those are my 3 big actionable items that I think everybody should do. Like, go take a hard look in the mirror at your communication and be like, why do we have the problems that we have? A lot of it can just be traced back to how we do things. So what I run into with my customers is, it's just chaos. Like, there's communication can spiral out of control so fast especially when you have different parties. So say you have this person texting, this person emailing, you got somebody talking on the phone. You have all these different stories. And as a leader of your company, how are you supposed to ever understand exactly what's happening on every job? What are customers saying without having a clear understanding of that? So one of the reasons they end up with us is, like I said, that he said, she said, that's out there, that's the industry standard. We get rid of that because we get everybody in one place and we create that record. So that's what really appeals to people, is there's no longer these conversations happening on personal cell phones. One of the big ones I hear is guys just let people use their personal cell phone because they don't want to go get a plan. Then next thing, that person quits and there's a problem with the job. And what does the homeowner have? They have decided the story they want to tell, not going to necessarily show all the pieces. So start to take control of the stuff that we can control and put those systems in place. Have that understanding. Set the appropriate expectations. I think 95% of the issues within business and within construction is an expectation problem. If we could just set the appropriate expectations from day one, it would change a lot of things, especially with our customer interactions and communication. Like, builder comms doesn't fix it all. Like, there's still stuff you have to do. We just make it a lot easier. We're a tool in the tool belt to help you be a better communicator, but you still have to set expectations.
It is definitely a tool to use to plug into your systems and process. And I really like how you mentioned, that processes, it's not just one-time deal. You create a process and you can't just leave it there. You have to constantly improve it. You have to get the feedback from your team who actually perform those steps and see how they can be improved. I love all of those points. I really hope that this has been helpful for our viewers. If any of you guys want to reach out to Ron, I am leaving all the information about him and his product and his podcast. That is fantastic, by the way. You should give it a listen. I will leave everything in the box below. So go ahead and reach out to Ron. Thank you everyone for tuning in for this episode. We're very excited to share that information, and subscribe to get more videos like this.